The bridge of the Coalition flagship Eternal Wing felt like a tomb. Commander Zixthar stood before the tactical display, his feathers pressed flat against his body in a gesture of deep stress. The holographic map showed the truth in cold blue light. 3,000 Coalition ships remained. 15,000 Vrakoth biovessels surrounded them in a tightening noose. How long can we hold? Admiral Corvus asked. The large warrior shifted his weight, his thick-scaled hide showing scars from 3 years of war. His species, the Draconeer, had never retreated from battle in their recorded history. Today might be the first time. Zixthar clicked his beak twice, calculating. 2 hours. Maybe 3 if we use the asteroid field for cover. And behind us? Corvus already knew the answer. 12 billion civilians on the Calthera colonies. Evacuation would take 6 days. We don't have 6 hours. Science Officer Morell looked up from her station, her reptilian eyes wide with fear. She was young, barely into her 2nd decade of service. Commander, the Vrakoth are moving into attack formation. They'll begin bombardment in 17 minutes. Zixthar had seen this pattern before. The Vrakoth didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They consumed. Every world they touched became a husk, stripped of all biological matter to fuel their endless swarm. 40% of known space had fallen in 3 years. Every species in the Coalition had lost at least one homeworld. All ships, defensive formation Theta 9, Zixthar commanded. His voice remained steady even as his heart raced. Prepare for full engagement. Transfer all non-essential power to shields and weapons. The other captains acknowledged. Zixthar saw their faces on the communication grid. Aventi like himself, Draconeer warriors, the crystalline Shardborn, the aquatic Tide Lords, the massive Stonebearers, the energy-based Lumens, and the insectoid Chitauri. 7 species that had put aside centuries of minor conflicts to face extinction together. They would die together too. Commander, Morell said quietly. Should I send the final distress call? Zixthar nodded. It was protocol, nothing more. A message shouted into the void that no one would answer in time. The nearest Coalition reinforcements were 2 weeks away. Even if someone heard them, what could they do? Morell's claws tapped across her console. The message transmitted on all frequencies in all languages, with their exact coordinates. A desperate prayer to an empty universe. 30 seconds passed. Then the communication console chimed. Morell's head snapped up. Commander, we have a response. Reinforcements? Corvus stepped forward, hope flickering in his eyes. I don't know, sir. The language database can't identify the origin. Wait, it's translating now. She pressed a control and a voice filled the bridge. Terran Defense Fleet en route. Estimated time of arrival, 14 minutes. Hold your position. Silence gripped the bridge. Zixthar felt his feathers rise in confusion. Terran, run that designation through the database. Morell worked quickly, her claws flying across the controls. Sir, I have it. Earth. Listed as a quarantined world. Pre-FTL civilization. Status shows they achieved radio communication approximately 200 years ago, but never developed faster than light travel. The Galactic Council classified them as a developing species and established a non-contact protocol. Then how did they respond to our distress call? Corvus demanded. How are they coming here in 14 minutes? Zixthar added. That system is 8 light years away. No one had answers. The tactical display continued its grim countdown. The Vrakoth vessels moved closer, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as their communication network. They would attack in 12 minutes now. Orders, Commander? His weapons officer asked. Zixthar made his decision. We do what we came here to do. We hold this line. If these Terrans actually arrive, then perhaps we have a chance. If not, we die knowing we gave those civilians every possible second to live. The crew responded with affirmations. Whatever fear they felt, they buried it beneath duty. Zixthar had served with some of these officers for 20 years. He knew their families. He had attended their bonding ceremonies and celebrated the births of their offspring. Today he would watch them die. The Vrakoth opened fire at 11 minutes. Plasma bolts and bioacid sprays crossed the distance. Coalition shields flared bright as they absorbed the impacts. The Coalition returned fire with their own weapons, particle beams, kinetic missiles, and fusion torpedoes. Ships on both sides began to die. Zixthar gripped the edge of his command station. The Eternal Wing shuddered as a Vrakoth cruiser exploded nearby, its death throes sending debris in all directions. A Shardborn destroyer fractured under sustained fire, its crystalline structure shattering into 1 million glittering pieces. 800 ships lost, Morell reported, her voice shaking. 30% shield integrity remaining on most vessels. Time to Terran arrival? Zixthar asked. 3 minutes, sir. If they're actually coming. Corvus growled low in his chest. A Death World species. I read about Earth once. High gravity, dangerous predators, extreme weather. If they managed FTL, they might be warriors. Or they might arrive with exploration vessels, Myrell countered. We don't know anything about them. The view screen showed the Vrakoth swarm pressing forward, utterly confident in their victory. They had won this fight 1,000 times before. Zixthar wondered if the Terrans knew what they were flying into. He wondered if their 14 minutes would matter at all. The countdown reached 0. Space tore open. The space in front of the Coalition fleet did something wrong. That was the only way Myrell could describe it. Not the familiar ripple of warp drives or the bright flash of hyperspace gates. Space simply opened like a wound. And through those tears in reality came ships. 247 vessels emerged in perfect formation. The dimensional rifts closed behind them with a sound that registered on sensors as a low-frequency hum that made Myrell's scales itch. She had never seen FTL technology like this. What kind of drive system is that? She whispered. The human ships were unlike anything in the Coalition database. Where most species built their vessels with smooth curves and flowing lines, these ships looked angry. Sharp angles dominated their design. Every surface seemed designed to deflect or destroy. Their hulls were dark, almost black, with minimal lighting. They looked like predators emerging from deep water. Zixthar studied the tactical display with growing confusion. The human fleet was tiny. Against the 15,000 Vrakoth vessels and what remained of the 3,000 Coalition ships, 247 seemed like a bad joke, sir. We're receiving a transmission, Myrell said. The view screen changed. A human face appeared. The alien was smaller than Zixthar had expected, with pale brown skin and dark eyes that held an unsettling calmness. The human wore a dark blue uniform with insignia that meant nothing to the Coalition crew. This is Admiral Chen Akihara of the Terran Defense Fleet, commanding the TDFS Indomitable, the human said. Her voice was steady and professional. Coalition forces fall back to defensive position Echo 7. We'll handle this. Corvus made a sound of disbelief. They'll handle it. There are less than 300 of them. On the view screen, the Vrakoth swarm continued forward, completely ignoring the new arrivals. They had learned long ago that smaller fleets meant easier prey. The biovessels shifted formation, preparing to sweep around the humans and continue their assault on the Coalition. The human admiral didn't wait for a response from Zixthar. Her image disappeared from the screen. On the tactical display, the human fleet split apart with mechanical precision. They formed into 17 separate strike groups, each moving at speeds that made Myrell check her sensors twice. Commander, those ships are accelerating at 12 Gs, she reported. Our vessels would crush their crews at that speed. Maybe they have better inertial dampeners, Corvus suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe humans are just tougher than they look, Zixthar murmured. He opened a channel to all Coalition ships. All vessels pull back as ordered. Give the Terrans room to engage. His captains hesitated. Retreat went against every instinct, especially when they were abandoning such a small allied force. But orders were orders. The Coalition fleet began moving backward, their shields still raised, weapons still hot. The Vrakoth saw the retreat and surged forward.
They had won.
In moments, they would break through and reach the colonies behind. 12 billion lives hung in the balance. The human fleet attacked, no declaration of war. No demands for surrender, no hesitation at all. The 17 strike groups opened fire simultaneously, and Myrell's entire worldview shattered. The first weapons to fire were kinetic. Railguns, her sensors told her, but that simple word didn't capture what she witnessed. Solid metal slugs, each one the size of a ground vehicle, accelerated to 30% of light speed. They crossed the distance to the Vrakoth fleet in seconds. Shields meant nothing. The kinetic projectiles punched straight through the Vrakoth bioarmor like it was thin fabric. Ships exploded from the inside out, as the rounds transferred all their energy in microseconds. The vacuum of space filled with debris and frozen biological matter. Impossible, Corvus breathed. Those velocities should require reactors 10 times the size of their ships. Myrell was already running calculations. Sir, if their power generation is that efficient, then there are other systems. She didn't finish. The implications were too vast. The second wave of human weapons launched. The sensors called them missiles, but these were nothing like Coalition munitions. Each one moved with its own intelligent guidance system. dodging around debris and incoming Vrakoth fire with ease. When they reached their targets, they didn't explode conventionally. Fusion-pumped lasers, Myrell reported in awe. Each warhead creates a directed energy beam. Sir, the temperature readings these are like small stars. The beams lasted only a fraction of a second, but in that time they carved through Vrakoth vessels like surgical tools. The humans weren't just destroying ships. They were targeting specific points. Command nodes, power centers, weapons clusters. Every shot killed something critical. The Vrakoth swarm tried to respond. 15,000 ships turned their attention to the human fleet, pouring fire into the space where the Terran vessels danced. Bioacid sprays, plasma bolts, kinetic harpoons, and viral bombs all converged on the humans. Nothing touched them. The human point defense systems activated, and Myrell watched in disbelief as thousands of incoming projectiles simply ceased to exist. Laser grids tracked every threat. Gaussian cannons, smaller versions of the railguns, fired constantly in a defensive sphere around each ship. The humans had created a wall of metal and energy that nothing could penetrate. They predicted it, Myrell said suddenly. Look at their movements. Zixthar saw it too. The human ships weren't reacting to Vrakoth fire. They were already moving before the enemy weapons launched, positioning themselves in the perfect spots to avoid or intercept. Their combat computers were predicting Vrakoth actions seconds before they happened. How is that possible? Corvus demanded. Artificial intelligence, Zixthar guessed. More advanced than anything we've developed. The Vrakoth realized their mistake. 8,000 vessels broke formation and turned toward the human fleet with their full attention. If they could just reach these strange newcomers, their numerical advantage would win. They never got close. The humans shifted tactics smoothly. No panic, no disorder. They simply adapted. The strike groups reformed into a defensive wall and their firing rate doubled. Then tripled. Myrell lost count of the exploding Vrakoth ships. Her sensors struggled to keep up with the destruction. 40 seconds into the engagement, 3,000 Vrakoth vessels had been destroyed. At 60 seconds, the number reached 6,500. The Vrakoth hive mind, for the first time in 3 years, made a decision it had never made before. It ran. The remaining vessels turned and fled, engaging their own FTL drives in a desperate attempt to escape. The human fleet didn't pursue. They held formation, their dark ships now surrounded by the glowing debris of their enemies. The entire engagement had lasted 97 seconds. On the bridge of the Eternal Wing, no one spoke. They simply stared at their sensors, trying to process what they had witnessed. The Vrakoth, the unstoppable swarm that had consumed 40% of the galaxy, had just fled in terror from a human fleet 1/60th their size. Admiral Chen's face reappeared on the viewscreen. She looked exactly as calm as before, as if she had just completed a routine patrol rather than the most one-sided battle in recorded history. Coalition Command, this is Admiral Chen. Threat has been neutralized. Requesting permission to dock for alliance discussions. We have much to talk about. Myrell couldn't stop watching the battle recordings. She had reviewed them 17 times now, and each viewing revealed something new that terrified her. The precision, the efficiency, the complete absence of wasted movement or firepower. The humans fought like they had been doing this for centuries. Science Officer Myrell, report to Conference Room 1, the intercom announced. She saved her analysis and made her way through the corridors of the Eternal Wing. Other crew members moved aside as she passed, all of them wearing the same expression of shock. The entire fleet was still processing what they had witnessed. Some of the Draconeer warriors she passed looked shaken, and nothing shook a Draconeer. The conference room held the coalition leadership. Commander Zixthar stood at the head of the table, his feathers still pressed flat. Admiral Corvus was there, along with the captains of the other species' flagships, and at the far end of the table sat 3 humans. Admiral Chen Akihara sat in the center, flanked by 2 officers. One was a tall man with dark skin and sharp eyes who introduced himself as Captain Marcus Webb. The other was a shorter woman with East Asian features named Lieutenant Park Jin-sun. All 3 wore the same dark blue uniforms, and all 3 carried themselves with the relaxed confidence of apex predators. Myrell took her seat and tried not to stare. The humans were smaller than most species present. Chen barely reached Zixthar's chest height. They looked fragile with their soft skin and lack of natural armor or weapons. Yet everyone in the room knew the truth. These fragile-looking beings had just accomplished something impossible. The final count is verified, Zixthar said. 11,400 Vrakoth vessels destroyed. 0 human casualties. 0 human ships damaged. He looked at Chen. Admiral, I have been fighting for 3 years. I have studied every battle, every engagement. What I witnessed today should not be possible. Chen nodded. I understand your confusion. May I be direct? Please. Your tactics are defensive. Your technology prioritizes shields and endurance. You fight wars expecting them to last years, and you build your ships accordingly. Chen leaned forward. Humans fight differently. We learned long ago that the best defense is overwhelming offense. We don't block attacks. We destroy threats before they can attack, Corvus growled. Your railguns. They penetrate our shields like they don't exist. Because shields waste energy, Lieutenant Park said. Her voice was crisp and technical. You're trying to absorb or deflect incoming fire. We calculated it's more efficient to simply not get hit, and to make sure the enemy can't shoot back. Your point defense is perfect, Myrell said quietly. Our sensors show your combat computers predicting Vrakoth actions 4 to 7 seconds in advance. How Park smiled slightly. Pattern recognition. The Vrakoth are a hive mind. They're efficient, but they fall into predictable patterns. Our AI analyzed 3 years of your battle data during our journey here. By the time we arrived, we knew exactly how they would respond to any given situation. 3 years of data analyzed during a 14-minute flight? Myrell's tail twitched in disbelief. Our quantum computers process information somewhat faster than yours, Park admitted. Captain Webb spoke for the first time, his voice deep and measured. Admiral Chen, perhaps we should explain the full situation. Chen nodded. You're all wondering how a pre-FTL species suddenly appeared with advanced technology and military doctrine. The truth is, we're not pre-FTL. We haven't been for 127 years. The conference room erupted in confusion. Zixthar held up a wing for silence. But the Galactic Council's monitoring stations show Earth as pre-FTL. We would have detected your development. You detected what we wanted you to detect, Chen said calmly. When we received your FTL primer signal, we made a choice. We could announce ourselves and join your community. Or we could wait, observe, and prepare. Prepare for what? Corvus demanded. For the worst. Chen's expression hardened. Admiral, I'm going to share something about human history. It won't be pleasant. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the table. Myrell watched scenes of destruction, weapons of impossible power, and countless dead. Human dead. The humans had fought each other. For our entire recorded history, humans have been at war. Chen explained. Not with aliens. With ourselves. Nation against nation. Ideology against ideology. We have killed each other with every weapon we could invent, from sharpened stones to nuclear bombs. The room went silent. The concept was almost incomprehensible. War between members of the same species happened, but rarely and usually over resources. These humans had made it their defining characteristic. When we detected your FTL signals, Chen continued, we had to ask ourselves a question. What if the galaxy is hostile? What if we announce ourselves and encounter a species that wants to destroy us? We had just finished our last global war, nearly 1 billion dead. We decided we would never be that vulnerable again. So you prepared, Zixthar said slowly. For 127 years. We built in secret. We developed weapons. We created the defense fleet. We assumed the worst-case scenario and prepared for it. Chen gestured to the display. Every human ship carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Not because we want to, because we never want to be helpless again. Myrell felt cold. The humans hadn't arrived as saviors. They had arrived as survivors who had armed themselves against a hostile universe. But you came when we called, Zixthar said. Why? Chen's expression softened. Because when we finally detected your communications and learned there was a galactic community, we monitored your broadcasts. We learned your languages. We watched your culture, and we saw that most species in this galaxy are peaceful. You cooperate. You trade. You don't massacre each other over territory or ideology. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the debris field. When we heard your distress call, there was a debate on Earth. Some said we should stay hidden. Others said this was our chance to join the galaxy as friends rather than strangers. She turned back. I argued that it didn't matter. We had heard people crying for help. We don't leave people to die. That's not who we are. Your weapons suggest otherwise, Corvus said, though his tone was more curious than accusatory. Our weapons exist so we never have to use them on innocents, Captain Webb said. We spent a century preparing for hostile aliens. Instead, we found victims who needed help. That doesn't make our weapons less necessary. It just means we finally know who to point them at. Chen returned to her seat. The Vrakoth are a threat to all organic life. They won't stop with your territories. Eventually, they'll reach Earth. So we came here for two reasons, to help you and to help ourselves. You said you have 247 ships here, Zixthar said carefully. Is that your full fleet? Park and Webb both smiled at that. Chen's expression didn't change. No, Commander. This is an expeditionary force. Earth currently maintains 40 full battle fleets, each one containing between 200 and 300 vessels depending on class composition. Myrelle did the math in her head and felt dizzy. The humans had 10,000 warships, each one apparently as powerful as what they had just witnessed. We also have defensive installations around Earth, Mars, and Jupiter, along with 3 deep space fortress stations. Chen added, "We've been very busy for the last century." Corvus leaned back in his chair, his scales rasping against metal. You prepared for war with the entire galaxy? Yes. And now you want to save it instead? Yes. Chen folded her hands on the table. Gentlemen, ladies, and honored beings of all designations, humanity would like to propose a military alliance. We will commit forces to defend coalition territories and eliminate the Vrakoth threat. In exchange, we ask for diplomatic recognition, trade agreements, and cultural exchange. We've been alone for a very long time. We'd like to stop being alone. Zixthar looked at his fellow officers. He saw fear in some eyes, hope in others. The humans were offering salvation, but they were also revealing that they could destroy the coalition as easily as they had destroyed the Vrakoth. It was an offer of friendship backed by overwhelming force. We need to discuss this, Zixthar said finally. Of course. Chen stood. We'll return to our ships. Take your time. The Vrakoth won't be back for a while. As the humans left, Myrelle watched them go. They walked like soldiers, alert and controlled. She thought about their history of war and their weapons that could crack planets. She thought about how they had chosen to help instead of conquer. The galaxy had just changed forever. She hoped it was for the better. The alliance was formed 3 days later. Zixthar signed the document with his own talon, making it official. The coalition would open its territories to human vessels and establish formal diplomatic relations. In return, the Terran Defense Fleet would provide military support against the Vrakoth threat. What they didn't expect was how quickly the humans would move. 2 weeks after the first contact, Admiral Chen arrived at Coalition headquarters with a proposal. She brought tactical data, strategic analysis, and a complete battle plan. Myrelle attended the briefing as the Coalition's chief science advisor, and she watched as Chen transformed the entire military doctrine of 7 species. The Vrakoth have a staging ground here, Chen said, pointing to a star system deep in contested space. Long-range reconnaissance shows approximately 40,000 vessels gathering for a major push. They're preparing to attack the Shardborn home systems. The Shardborn Admiral, a crystalline being named Resonance of Thunder, flickered with agitation. We have detected this buildup. Our projections show they will attack in 2 months. We are evacuating what we can. You don't need to evacuate, Chen said simply. We're going to destroy that fleet. The conference room fell silent. Corvus leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. 40,000 ships, Admiral Chen. Even with your technology, that's a different scale than what we faced at Kelthera. Which is why we're not going alone. Chen activated another display. We're proposing a joint operation. 20 human vessels, 200 coalition ships. We'll teach you our tactics while we fight. You want us to attack 40,000 Vrakoth with 220 ships? Zixthar felt his feathers rise. That's suicide. It's mathematics, Lieutenant Park said. She pulled up combat simulations. The Vrakoth win through numbers and persistence. But they have weaknesses. They cluster around command nodes. They follow predictable attack patterns. They rely on overwhelming force rather than tactical flexibility. Captain Webb continued the explanation. We've analyzed every Vrakoth engagement in your records. They've never faced an enemy that strikes hard and fast at critical points. They're used to grinding battles where they can reinforce and adapt. We won't give them that chance. Chen pulled up a tactical map. The staging ground is in the Broken Reaches system. 4 rocky planets, 1 gas giant, and a debris field from an old supernova. Terrible defensive position for the Vrakoth. They're spread across multiple orbital zones. That's intentional, Myrelle said, understanding dawning. They spread out so a single attack can't destroy them all at once. Exactly. Which means we won't make a single attack. Chen highlighted different areas of the system. We'll hit them with 7 simultaneous strikes at their command clusters. We've identified the primary hive mind control nodes in the fleet. Kill those, and the rest become confused and uncoordinated. You can identify individual command vessels in a fleet of 40,000? Resonance of thunder's light pulsed with disbelief. Park nodded. Their bioships emit specific electromagnetic signatures when they're processing hive mind directives. It's subtle, but our sensors can detect it. We've already identified 17 command nodes in the staging ground. 17 targets, Webb said. 7 human strike groups, 3 ships each. We hit all 17 nodes within the first minute. The coalition fleet comes in behind us and exploits the chaos. Zixthar studied the plan. It was insane. It was also brilliant. You're offering to train coalition forces in your tactics during an actual battle. Best way to learn is by doing, Chen agreed. We'll coordinate all movements, share our sensor data in real time, and guide your vessels through the engagement. By the end, your captains will understand how we fight. Corvus slammed his fist on the table. I like it. When do we leave? 48 hours. We need time to integrate our communication systems with yours. The preparations moved with human efficiency. Myrelle found herself aboard the Indomitable, working with Lieutenant Park to link coalition computers with Terran systems. The technology gap was staggering. Human quantum processors operated at speeds that made coalition computers look ancient. How did you advance so quickly? Myrelle asked as they worked. You had no one to trade with. No uplifted technology. You did all of this alone. Park paused, considering her answer. Necessity, competition. When you're fighting each other, you innovate or you die. Every human nation pushed technology forward because they had to stay ahead of their enemies. It was wasteful and terrible, but it made us very good at advancement. Do you regret it? Your violent history? Every day, Park said quietly. But I can't change the past. None of us can. We can only use what we learned to build something better. She smiled sadly. We turned our weapons of war into tools of protection. That has to count for something. The combined fleet departed on schedule, 20 human vessels, sleek and dark, accompanied by 200 coalition ships. Zixthar commanded the coalition wing from the Eternal Wing, while Chen coordinated overall strategy from the Indomitable. The journey to the Broken Reaches took 6 hours using human slip space technology. The coalition ships traveled in human-generated wormholes, piggybacking on Terran FTL drives. It was faster than any method the coalition possessed. When they emerged in the system, they found exactly what Chen had predicted. 40,000 Vrakoth bioships orbiting in loose clusters. The hive mind hadn't detected them yet. The humans had some kind of stealth technology that made their fleet nearly invisible. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The human's voice came through clearly on every bridge. Coalition forces, watch your tactical displays. We're highlighting targets and approach vectors. Follow our lead, trust your instincts. And remember, hit hard and hit fast. The 7 human strike groups split off, each one moving toward a different orbital zone. The coalition fleet divided into 7 supporting wings, each one trailing behind a human group. Strike Group 7, you're with us. Captain Webb's voice came through to Zixthar's fleet. We're taking the command cluster near the gas giant. 28 vessels, heavily defended. We'll eliminate the node. You mop up the confusion. Zixthar watched as Webb's 3 ships accelerated to impossible speeds. His own vessels followed as best they could, though they were far slower. The humans moved like dancers, weaving through space with perfect coordination. The Vrakoth detected them. Alarms must have rippled through the hive mind. 40,000 ships began moving, turning to face the threat. The humans struck first. All 7 strike groups opened fire simultaneously. Railgun rounds and fusion-pumped laser missiles crossed the system at relativistic speeds. The 17 command nodes exploded within seconds of each other. The effect was immediate. The Vrakoth fleet shuddered like a living thing. Ships crashed into each other as their perfect coordination vanished. Individual vessels began firing in random directions, no longer receiving clear instructions from the hive mind. Coalition forces, engage at will, Chen commanded. Target the confused vessels. Don't let them reorganize. Zixthar gave the order and his fleet surged forward. For the first time in 3 years, they weren't fighting defensively. They were attacking, exploiting weakness, striking at vulnerable targets. The humans had taught them something profound. War wasn't about endurance. It was about breaking the enemy's ability to fight back. The battle lasted 6 hours, not because the Vrakoth were strong, but because there were so many of them to eliminate. The coalition forces learned quickly, adapting to the human style of warfare. Strike hard, move fast. Never give the enemy time to adapt. When the last Vrakoth vessel fell, the coalition fleet had lost 37 ships. Tragic losses, but nothing compared to what they had expected. The humans had lost nothing. All ships, this is Chen. The Admiral's voice carried satisfaction. Excellent work. Coalition forces, you fought well. Your tactical adaptation was impressive. On the bridge of the Eternal Wing, Zixthar looked at his exhausted crew. They were staring at their displays in wonder. They had just helped destroy 40,000 enemy vessels with minimal losses. It seemed impossible, but they had learned. The humans had taught them that sometimes the best way to protect life was to be very, very good at taking it from those who threatened peace. Myrelle approached Zixthar, her tablet showing analysis data. Commander, I've been studying human battle doctrine. I think I understand them now. Explain. They're not warriors. They're survivors who became protectors. They know how to fight because they had to learn. And now they're teaching us the same lessons, but without making us suffer through centuries of self-destruction first. She looked out at the human ships, dark and deadly against the stars. They're giving us their hard-won knowledge. That's a gift more valuable than any technology. Zixthar nodded slowly. The humans had arrived like angels of death, destroying the Coalition's enemies in seconds. But they had stayed as teachers, showing 7 species how to defend themselves. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in 3 years, Zixthar felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. 6 months after first contact, Myrelle sat in what humans called a bar, aboard the Coalition station orbiting Sanctuary Prime. The establishment had become popular among both species, a place where warriors from 7 worlds mixed with humans from Earth. She held a glass of something the bartender called whiskey, though she hadn't dared taste it yet. Human alcohol was notoriously strong. Across the table, Lieutenant Park nursed her own drink and reviewed data on a tablet. They had been working together for months now, and Myrelle had learned that the human woman never stopped analyzing. The Joint Academy opens next month, Park said. 3,000 students from all Coalition species. They'll learn Terran tactical doctrine, engineering principles, and combat theory. The Terran doctrine, Myrelle said, testing the phrase. It had become common terminology. The Coalition military was being rebuilt from the ground up using human principles. It still feels strange. 6 months ago, we had never heard of humans. Now we're teaching their methods to every cadet. Is that a complaint? Park asked with a slight smile. An observation. Myrelle finally took a sip of the whiskey and immediately regretted it. Her eyes watered. How do you drink this poison? Practice. Park's smile widened. My grandfather made moonshine during the resource wars. This is actually mild. They had shared many such evenings over the past months. Park teaching Myrelle about human culture, and Myrelle explaining the intricacies of Coalition society. The cultural exchange went both ways, though the humans seemed endlessly curious about alien civilizations. The door opened and Admiral Chen entered, followed by Commander Zixthar and Admiral Corvus. The 3 commanders had become a familiar sight together, planning the ongoing campaign against the Vrakoth. Mind if we join? Chen asked. Please, Myrelle said, gesturing to the empty seats. Chen sat down with the easy grace Myrelle had come to associate with humans. They moved like predators even in casual settings. Relaxed but always aware. Corvus ordered something called beer, while Zixthar requested a venti honey wine. I received the latest reports from the front, Chen said, though her tone was casual rather than official. The Coalition fleets are performing exceptionally well. The Vrakoth are losing territory for the first time since the war began. They're retreating to their core systems, Corvus rumbled. 3 months ago, that would have been impossible. Now we're pushing them back. Zixthar clicked his beak thoughtfully. The tactical training helped, but it's more than that. My officers tell me they think differently now. They don't see battles as contests of endurance. They see weak points, opportunities, decisive moments. You're thinking like humans, Park said. For better or worse. Definitely for better, Zixthar replied. My daughter will grow up in a galaxy where the Vrakoth are not an existential threat. That's worth learning new tactics. A group of human soldiers entered the bar, laughing among themselves. They nodded respectfully to Chen and found a corner table. Myrelle watched them, still fascinated by human behavior. They seemed so casual about violence. They joked and drank as if they hadn't spent the morning destroying enemy vessels. Does it bother you? She asked suddenly. The killing? You're all so calm about it. The table fell silent. Chen set down her glass and met Myrelle's eyes. Every day. Every single day it bothers me. But we learned a long time ago that if you let the horror paralyze you, you can't protect the people who need protection. We compartmentalize, Park added quietly. We laugh and drink because if we didn't, we'd break. The killing is necessary, but we don't have to enjoy it. We just have to be good at it. Corvus nodded slowly. I think I understand humans better now. You're not warriors. You're soldiers. There's a difference. What difference? Myrell asked. Warriors seek glory in battle. Soldiers do what must be done and hope for peace. The Draconeer Admiral looked at his drink. My species has always been warriors. We valued honor in combat. Humans taught me that sometimes the most honorable thing is to end the fight as quickly as possible. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Chen told stories about Earth, about cities and oceans and mountains. Zixthar shared tales of Aventi migration festivals. They were building friendship, slowly and carefully, between species that had never known each other existed. A communication alert interrupted them. Chen checked her device and frowned. Interesting. We're receiving a transmission. Source is Vrakoth. Everyone went quiet. The Vrakoth had never communicated before. They consumed and moved on. They were a force of nature, not a civilization that talked. Chen activated a holographic display. A face appeared, though calling it a face was generous. The Vrakoth had insectoid features, compound eyes, and mandibles that clicked as it spoke. What are you? The voice was strange, layered, as if many beings spoke simultaneously. The hive mind itself was addressing them. Chen stood, her posture straightening into military formality. I am Admiral Chen Akihara of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are humans. We have consumed 1,000 species. None fought as you fight, none adapted as you adapt, none killed as efficiently as you kill. The Vrakoth paused. You are like us. You are death that moves. No, Chen said firmly. We are nothing like you. You consume because it's your nature. We fight because others need protection. There's a fundamental difference. You will destroy us. We recognize this now. Your tactics spread. Your doctrine changes the equation. We cannot win. Corvus leaned forward. Then surrender. Stop attacking. Return to your home systems. We cannot. We must consume to survive. Our biology demands it. Myrell felt a chill. The Vrakoth weren't evil. They were just following their nature, as inevitable as gravity. And humanity had become the force that would stop them. Chen's expression hardened. Then we will contain you. We'll establish a perimeter around your core systems. You can have that space, but if you cross the boundary, we will destroy every ship that does. You can survive in your territory. You just can't expand anymore. You would grant us mercy? We would grant you the chance to live within limits. Maybe someday you'll find another way to survive. Until then, you stay in your box. The Vrakoth was silent for a long moment. We accept these terms, but know this, humans. We recognize what you are. You are the universe's answer to threats like us. You exist to balance expansion with containment. You are the guardians, whether you accept that role or not. The transmission ended. Chen sat down slowly, her hands shaking slightly. Myrell realized the Admiral was not as calm as she appeared. A cage, Zixthar said softly. You're going to build a cage around an entire species. A big cage, Chen replied. 12 star systems. Enough resources to sustain them. But yes, a cage. And if they break out, then we do what we've always done. We stop them. Park spoke up, her voice thoughtful. The Vrakoth called us guardians. Maybe they're right. We spent so long preparing to defend ourselves that we became good at defending others. There are worse fates, Corvus said. Though I pity any species that tests your patience. The mood in the bar shifted. The weight of responsibility settled over them all. The humans had arrived as saviors, and now they were becoming the galaxy's protectors. It was a role they had never sought, but seemed uniquely suited for. Myrell ordered another whiskey, determined to build up her tolerance. She had been researching human culture extensively, and had found something interesting. A quote from an old Earth leader. Speak softly and carry a big stick. The humans had certainly brought a big stick, and they were teaching the entire coalition how to use it. 3 weeks later, Myrell attended the opening ceremony of the Terran Coalition Military Academy. Thousands of young beings from dozens of species gathered to learn from humanity's hard-won lessons. Chen gave a speech about responsibility and restraint, about power used for protection rather than conquest. Myrell watched the graduates to be, their eyes bright with determination. They would learn to fight like humans, to think like humans, to protect like humans. The next generation of coalition military would be transformed by human doctrine. The Vrakoth remained in their designated systems, contained by a joint human coalition fleet. Ships patrolled the borders constantly. There had been 2 attempted breakouts. Both were stopped in minutes. The Vrakoth learned quickly that the fence around them was real. Myrell eventually published her research on human civilization. The paper was titled, Survivors Who Became Guardians, Understanding Terran Military Philosophy. It became required reading at the academy. She had tried to capture what made humans different. They were not naturally violent, she wrote. They were naturally protective. Their violence came from their need to defend their own. And once they considered you their own, they would move heaven and earth to keep you safe. She ended the paper with that quote about speaking softly and carrying a big stick. It seemed to sum up humanity perfectly. They could be your best friend or your worst nightmare. The choice was yours. That evening, Myrelle found herself back at the bar with Park. They had become friends, an odd pair perhaps, but genuine in their mutual respect. Your people changed everything, Myrelle said. The galaxy changed us too, Park replied. We came here prepared for enemies. We found friends instead. That's worth more than any weapon. They raised their glasses in a toast. To friendship, to peace. To humans and aliens learning to walk the same path. To the strange and wonderful future they were building together. Outside the station, human ships patrolled alongside coalition vessels. Dark and deadly, yes, but also protective and vigilant. The guardians of a galaxy that had finally found its protectors, and in the darkness between stars the Vrkoth remained in their cage. A reminder that sometimes mercy means drawing a line and having the strength to enforce it. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had made sure of that. And somehow, against all odds, it had changed for the better.